My wife worked in a delicatessen in North London in the early 1990s. Every Saturday morning, same time, an elderly woman would come through the door. Her order never changed. One rasher of bacon, one egg, and a chicken carcass to make stock with. Now, that's not a big order. In fact, by most business metrics, it's barely worth ringing up. But my wife still remembers her nearly 40 years later. Why? Because that woman wasn't just buying ingredients, she was being known. She had a place in that shop. Someone expected her. Someone noticed when she walked in. And that small, quiet thing is the kind of memory Amazon can't compete with. I see this question come up again and again in forums, in conversations, at trade events. How can I possibly compete with online? And it's a fair question, but the answer isn't lower prices. It isn't faster delivery. The answer is that Amazon doesn't know your customers' names. You do, or at least you should. And in this video, we're going to look at exactly how to build a simple recognition system. Nothing complicated, nothing expensive, that turns casual shoppers into loyal regulars. The kind of customer who wouldn't dream of clicking buy now instead of walking through your door. Hi, I'm Keith Lockwood. I help independent retailers thrive with less noise and more clarity. Let's start with what personal touch actually means, because I think it gets misunderstood. When most people hear know your customers, they think of loyalty cards, databases, CRM systems, and yes, those tools have their place. But that's not what we're talking about here. What we're talking about is something much older and much simpler. The act of noticing someone, of remembering something about them that has nothing to do with what you're trying to sell them. When I was 15, working Saturdays in a greengrocer's, we'd set aside fruit and veg for our regulars before the shop even opened. My mother, now sadly passed, remembered the specific orders of customers from my grandfather's shop in the 1950s. That wasn't software, that was genuine interest. Here's why it matters. Customers can tell the difference. They can smell forced small talk a mile off. If you're remembering someone's name because a system told you to, that feels like being tracked. If you're remembering their name because you actually care, that feels like being seen. There's a fine line here, and it comes down to intent. If we're remembering preferences because we're interested in helping someone find what they need, that's caring. If we're remembering preferences to engineer a sale, that's something else entirely. And customers always know which side we're on. So the first shift is this: stop thinking about customer data. Start thinking about customer recognition. That's the foundation everything else is built on. The action here is simple. This week, notice one thing about 5 of your regulars that has nothing to do with what they buy. Maybe someone mentioned a holiday. Maybe someone's grandchildren are visiting. Maybe someone always comes in looking a bit more frazzled on a Monday morning. Just notice. That's the starting point. Now, if you're thinking, well, that sounds nice, Keith, but I can't remember everything about everyone. You're right, you can't. And you don't need to. And here's where we get practical. Kellogg's produced a brilliant book called Sam Smith, Grocer Extraordinary. And even back then, nearly 100 years ago, the advice was the same. Know your customer. Remember their preferences. Build relationships that go beyond price. Good systems stand the test of time, and this one is beautifully simple. Start with your top 5 or 10 regulars. Not your entire customer base, just 10. People who come in every week who have been shopping with you for years. The ones you already have half recognition but might not know their name. Write down their names. Then note 3 things about each one. What do they usually buy? What do they always ask for? And is there a personal detail that they've shared? Kids, hobbies, dietary needs, an upcoming event? Now, create a simple way to remember this. A notebook behind the counter works perfectly well. A spreadsheet if you prefer. Even the customer notes section in your till system. The method genuinely doesn't matter. What matters is consistency. You write it down and you look at it. And then, and this is the important bit, you act on it. When Mrs. Jenkins comes in on Thursday, you've already set aside the ripe avocados because you know her grandchildren visit on a Friday. When a regular mentions they love a particular olive oil, you set a jar aside before it sells out. When someone mentioned a kitchen renovation last time, you ask how it's going. These aren't grand gestures. They're the retail equivalent of saying someone's name. A small signal that they matter, that their presence is noticed, that this isn't just a transaction. So pick your first 10, write their names down and what you know, and make them feel recognized. Now, I want to address something directly because I know some of you might be thinking, this is all very warm and fuzzy, Keith, but I need to pay the rent. It is a fair point. So let's talk about why this isn't soft. It's strategic. Tesco innovated Clubcard data, and they have that data on millions of customers. They track every purchase. They trend every preference. But they can't look Mrs. Jenkins in the eye and ask her how her grandchildren liked the avocados. You can. And that's not a limitation of your scale. That's the advantage of your scale. When you're running an independent shop, you can know 50, 100, even 200 regulars by name, by preference, by habit. You can create something that no algorithm, no loyalty program, no amount of data can replicate. In a world of algorithmic recommendations and impersonal shopping baskets, being genuinely recognized is increasingly rare, and rare things are valuable. Think about it this way. Amazon can offer lower prices. They can offer next day delivery, but they can't set aside fruit for their regulars. They can't ask about kitchen renovations. They can't remember that someone always shops on a Saturday morning for one rasher of bacon, one egg, and a chicken carcass. That's your edge. It can't be copied. It can't be undercut. And it can't be automated. In a retail landscape that's increasingly impersonal, increasingly digital, increasingly the same, that matters more than we might think. Now, to help you get started with this straight away, I've put together a simple one-page tool. It's called the Customer Recognition Starter Sheet. It gives you space for your first 20 regulars, prompts for the 3 things to note about each one, and a weekly tracker to make sure you're actually putting this into practice. Print it out, keep it behind the counter, and use it this week. It's not complicated, and it doesn't have to be. You'll find the link in the description below. It's free, it's useful, and it takes 10 minutes to fill in. And if you're wondering where your shop's real opportunities are, beyond just customer recognition, the Retail Profit Finder is a useful place to start. It's a straightforward diagnostic tool that helps you see what's working and where the gaps are. There's a link for that in the description as well. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Take care. Bye-bye.